Greetings, greetings, greetings. I hope you can see me and hear me. Please say hello in the chat box if you're able to. We'll be starting in just one moment. Okay, we're shedding some light on this subject. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Alrighty, we're going to get started. I hope you can see me and hear me. Today is just a beautiful summer day. It is a little bit hot outside, so I thought I would sketch indoors. And I've done this with you guys before, so I hope you enjoy it, both live and replay viewers. And so we've got a few fun things to sketch today. I'm just going to be using some various things, but it doesn't really matter what you use. We're mainly just doing the outlines or silhouettes of things. And yeah, so it's been really beautiful lately here in Oregon where I live. I've been sketching like these fun sweet peas that are in my backyard. And I did this in just 10 minutes as a challenge to myself to show folks just how fast you can sketch and that you don't need a lot of time. Just takes a few moments to go out on your patio or in your backyard or even a little hike to a neighborhood park and do some sketching. And it is so calming and tranquil for your brain to be in your right brain, to be thinking in the moment, not worrying about the past or the future. So that's what I do. And I think I've also put a link somewhere to tell you later on about my doing these lives this week, starting today, christineelder.com/membership. And that should also be in your comments, I believe. I'm not sure if this is showing backwards or not, but tell me in the chat if you can tell me if this is backwards, these words. So anyway, I'm promoting that and doing a whole bunch of fun things. So anyway, what can we do first? Let's see. We should do something a little bit simple. So these are things from my yard and my Cabinet of Curiosities that we're sketching today. And let's see, I don't want to sketch on this paper. I want to save that. So what is this? A few months ago, you may have joined me on Memorial Day for the Flanders poppy I was drawing. Well, this happens to be its fruit. And they have this really unique fruit that kind of looks like a funny haircut on top of a person. And what you see, these little black things, these are the old anthers, the male parts that had the pollen. And the petals have fallen off. The petals were a beautiful blood red, kind of orangish blood red. And the Flanders poppy was significant of Memorial Day and Remembrance Day. So anyway, let's start that first. And you're going to be seeing this at a little bit different angle than I am. But I'm going to angle this a little bit up so I can see a bit of the top a bit better. And what I like to use to set things on the paper so they won't roll away is kneadable erasers. Tell me in the chat box if you know what these are, if you've used these before. And so these are really easy to change their shape, and they help to keep things from rolling away. So we're just going to do a quick sketch of this. And the whole idea that I like to encourage people to think about when they're sketching is the idea that it's not so much what ends up on the page, but what ends up in your brain in terms of the time you spent looking at something will help you to really understand it. Now, I'm going to draw this larger than life because, for one thing, that's good practice, and also because you can see it easier. And so this top part, we're just seeing, the very top. If I put it up like this, you can see that in the middle there, that's where the stigma and style was that accepted the pollen to create this big fruit. And then you see these really interesting kind of finger-like projections. So I'm not sure what those are called. But anyway, if you look at them from the side, then they're kind of flattened, right? Because they're foreshortened. And I'm not going to count them or anything. This isn't a scientific, illustration here, but we just see them. And then there's the big fruit. And these are a poppy, not the same type of poppy like a California poppy, like in California, but a different group. This is native to Europe, and this is actually related to the opium poppy. If you cut this in half here with a knife, you would see some white latex oozing out of it that's kind of poisonous, but that is actually what, where opium is derived from. Now at the base here, there's this little brown area, and that's where the petals were attached. There's beautiful kind of blood red petals, similar in color to these gorgeous wax currants that we have growing next to them. And so this is where those petals would have been. And then there's this stem, and the stem is super hairy. So, we could put a whole bunch of hairs in here, and I don't know. Yeah, they're kind of hairy feeling, kind of spiky. And the ones that are facing you would kind of be the shortest, especially because they would be kind of coming out towards you. Whereas the ones on the side, you'd see more from the side, and they would be longer. Anyway, and then there's all these interesting black spots, and some of them still have the anthers attached to them. That's actually the stem of the anthers called the filament, and then the anther that had the pollen on it was here. And so there's a bunch of those, and I could just sort of make those kind of any old which way. They're drying up, so they're not exact. So anyway, again, this is the Flanders poppy, and this is the seed head. And let's see, maybe I can cut into this. Let me get a little knife while you're drawing. So here's a knife. So if I cut into this and open it up, oh, you will see some seeds. Now it's funny, I don't see the white latex on here, but maybe it's because it's more dried up right now. But anyway, this is the cross section where you see where all the seeds would be. So this is kind of similar to poppy seeds that you would eat, but it's a different species. Okay, so anyway, that's that from my garden, the Flanders The Flanders poppy. Okay, let's move on and keep this going. Okay, so now I have this, and this is a type of pine cone. This is from my Cabinet of Curiosities. And again, I'm going to use this a kneadable eraser to kind of angle this up a bit. And I'm seeing this and drawing it at a different angle. Oh, hi, Carolyn. Thanks for joining. Yeah, we're starting on the second thing. We started doing these poppies real quick. Then we're going to go here, a little bit more difficult subject. But this is a sequoia, giant sequoia. And I was actually just this spring, I spent my birthday down at Sequoia National Park. And these are, of course, the sequoia big trees grow down there. And I got to see the very biggest one, the General Sherman tree, which is about as big around as my living room that I'm sitting in right now. But anyway, I've got this angled up here with the kneadable eraser, and I'm seeing it a little bit different angle than you are. But what you notice when you look at different cones, and there's lots and lots of trees that are called conifers that are cone bearing. They might be a pine tree, a fir, or a sequoia or redwood, but they all bear cones. And at first it seems really complicated to draw those shapes. But if you just focus on the patterns, the repeating patterns, and pine trees have an interesting repeating pattern. It's based on the Fibonacci series. And that's a series mathematically that was created or discovered by Leonardo Fibonacci back in the 1400s, where you would take a number and then you would add the number before it to get the next number. So like 3 is a combination of 2 and 1, and 5 is a combination of 2 and 3. And so it just so happens that pine cones, if you looked at them from the top, there would be a spiral, and they would be a certain spiral that is 2 Fibonacci numbers next to each other. So some pine trees have 3 spirals going in one direction, and then 5 spirals going in another direction, whereas others might have 5 and 8, or 8 and 13. And it gives this very interesting pattern. Sunflowers as well as pineapples are built the same way. And so what that means is actually when you look at something from the side, these are not exactly equal, these angles. So we're not drawing just an oval and going dink, 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 dink at the same angle. There's different angles. And so that relates to the fact that there's a smaller number of spirals going one way or the other. And so you might notice, again, it's a little bit challenging to see. It depends on the cone, but you can kind of see there's some steep angles going this way and some shallower angles going this way. Tell me in the chat box if you can see that, like Carolyn, if you're still here. And this is a little bit more obvious, maybe obvious, is there's a shallower angles this way and steeper angles this way. And so that is very interesting. Sometimes it's easiest to see in a young cone that hasn't been opened yet. Okay, so anyway. Okay, so this is the giant sequoia pine cone. And so again, I'm going to draw this bigger than it is. Anyway, I'm going to draw it over here so it's not in the shadow. So we've got a stem coming down, and you see this stem has, if you feel it, which I always recommend people feel things to be able to draw them more realistically, When you feel something, you're going to feel all these little zigzaggies. And I'm just kind of being a little bit symbolic here, but there's these little overlapping structures. Now, of course, my pencil is dying. I'm going to use a different pencil. Okay. So anyway, I just made a kind of a short stem. Okay. And then what I would do is I would draw sort of the overall shape. And the giant sequoia has a shape that's sort of like an egg, the same shape and size as an egg. Whereas this, I think this is kind of a spruce. It has a super long, thin cone, right? And then this Douglas fir is kind of right in the middle. Carolyn says, yes, you can see it. Wonderful. Good. So again, it's easier to see in some cones than others, and especially when they're younger, before the scales have opened, it's easier to see them. And of course, the pine cone is the reproductive structure of the tree. And so inside these scales, there used to be a little winged structure that had a seed at the base of it. Now, this kind of like the maple samara that I just picked up on my walk today. Same idea, except there's just one like this, where there's a seed and a little wing. And those are inside each of these areas, inside here. And again, when the cone is young, oh yeah, I do see a couple of them that came out of the, well, I don't know if you can see this. I'm trying to get it the right place. There, that brown thing in the middle, that is a wing and a seed. Very tiny, isn't it? Can you see that? Okay. So anyway, so the first thing I will do is I'll just draw this overall shape. And again, I'm trying to draw it larger than life, just because that's good practice for getting proportions right. And also just makes it a little bit easier for you guys to see it. And, you know, plant parts are a lot easier to draw than animal parts. And when you're drawing kind of an oval like this, if you're right-handed, you're going to do a better job on this side because your wrist can make a nice arc. Whereas on this side, you might tend to flatten it because it's harder to do an arc. So you just have to be really conscious of that. Earlier today on Instagram, I was drawing an orchid and I was showing that. You can always find me on Instagram at that elder girl, because my last name is Elder. So if you want to go check me out later on Instagram, you can. Okay, and Carolyn says you can see the seed, right? Alrighty, and so then, you know, what the next thing I would do would be kind of divide it up. And so, yeah, some of them are easier to see than others, but you don't have to be too perfect. And when you're drawing, sometimes it's a little bit hard to keep track of where you are. So I will kind of use another pencil like this to keep where I am. So I'm going to now draw kind of the shadows, or what I'm talking about is those shallow and steep angles. So in reality, there would be some steeper angles like this and some shallower angles like this in the Fibonacci series cone. And so I'm just kind of going to draw where those would be. And this next one is kind of like here. And this next one is kind of like here. So I'm kind of building it almost like I'm an architect. Just being really symbolic first. And then the other way, is now I am getting a little confused. It's easy to get confused. Kind of like that. And then you can kind of draw each of these separately, kind of look at them. So again, you're going to be seeing this at a little bit different angle than I am, but I might draw this top one. So now I'm drawing the lighter colored part, which is kind of the top of the seed. And I can kind of just follow inside of those lines that I drew already, because the lines were basically the shadows. And you see how much easier it is if I keep my pencil kind of where. So I'm trying to get a little bit more realistic. So something like this can be, a struggle and a little bit frustrating to draw for you if you get a little bit lost. But again, I always want you to focus on what you're learning by drawing and how much you'll appreciate this interesting structure, even though you're not happy with how it turned out. Okay, now I'm going to try to do these bigger ones that are facing us. And again, I'm staying kind of symbolic at first. And then we can get a little bit more realistic later. But I like to think of things first as if I'm sort of like an architect, and I'm drawing and making an architectural drawing. My father was an architect, and so I watched him. In fact, I still have his drafting table. I watched him as a little kid drawing. And, they would be these very precise drawings. So I kind of followed in his footsteps. I didn't get into architecture, but I did study scientific illustration, which is a similar idea of making very detailed drawings. So you see, I'm just having my pencil kind of help me find where I'm at here. I see a little part of one here and part of one here. There we go. How we doing so far? Okay, so now that I kind of have that base, now I'm kind of seeing that my stem should probably be relatively a little bit thicker. So now I can notice some more finer details, like inside each of these areas, there's kind of a squiggly line that almost looks like the upper and lower lip of a person. Do you see that? So you slowly just get more and more realistic here. And the more you draw something, the more you can draw it faster when you're in the field. And the more you can draw like different versions of it. Okay, so now there's a lot of lines. It's getting a little confusing. So what'll help is if we start adding the shadows. And so now I'm just going to add the shadows. And the shadow is going to be heaviest in the center because there's light coming from either side. So it's going to be heavier here and a little bit lighter on the edge. And darker and heavier, lighter. And lighter on the edge and darker. So always thinking about where your sun is coming from. Now, we're indoors today because it's 91 degrees outside and I'd rather be indoors. But if I was outdoors, I would try to really be showing where the natural light is coming from. And if I was practicing drawing three-dimensional forms, I would be having a light that was just more directional. Like if I turn this light off, it's a little bit more obvious that the light is coming from this direction, right? And there's a cast shadow over here. So, this could take a while to get more realistic. But then, if you want to get a little bit more realistic, you could notice how each of these kind of diamond shapes is sort of wrinkled on the edges. And so if I wanted to go along the edges of each one of these and, make that more wrinkled, So this is definitely a process going from, the big picture of getting the just most obvious exterior silhouette to getting more of these fine details. And, you could keep going. And then you could even also notice that each of these structures, they have some funny little lines on them. Like I said, they almost look like old people's lips, like an old person with really pursed lips with all these wrinkles on their lips. What do you think? Do you think they look like that? Right. Okay. So yeah, just noticing that every pine cone is different, and in these drawing demonstrations, I try to draw things that are pretty common, so that you could probably find some sort of a pine tree near where you live, and get some sort of a drawing of it. But again, just noticing they all have a different number of spirals, and there's always going to be a steeper spiral and a shallower spiral, because they're based on this Fibonacci series. And most pine cones, I would say, are 3-5 or 5-8 or 8-13, depending on the species. This is a cute one. This one is called the Douglas fir, and it has these cute little things sticking out of it that look like the little feet and tail of a mouse. And I think the Native Americans had like a Aesop's fable about it, where the mouse was trying to get in and steal the cones, and it closed down on it, and all that's left is the little feet and the legs. Now, speaking of rodents, it just happened that earlier today, I was out sketching, and I saw these cute rabbits, these little cottontails in my backyard. So this just shows kind of the difference between if you're sketching live in the field, something that's moving super quickly, compared to when you're drawing from a photograph. Like in my Instagram earlier today, if you want to go watch that later, at That Elder Girl, we drew some of those rabbits, and I did a little bit more detailed drawing of it in toned paper with black and white charcoal, where I got a lot more detail because I was using a photograph. Okay, anyway, so keeping things moving on. You can keep working on your cone later on. I got one more thing for us. And then, I do want to tell you about my program. It's called the Nature Notebook Club. And again, you can learn more about it on my website. Again, my name is Christine Elder. My website is christineelder.com/membership. You might also be able to see that in the chat box. It should be in the chat box where Carolyn has been chatting. So anyway, that should be a clickable link. But I'm doing special events all week, again, starting today with these live sketches, to explain and really inspire people to start a nature sketching practice. And I have a bonus. Somewhere. Oh, here it is. So I'm doing bonuses this week as well. And one of my bonuses for joining my nature sketching and journaling program is a PDF that you can download of my coloring book. And so I'll be uploading that to our website soon. And this is a coloring book that I did based on illustrations of tropical birds, parrots and hummingbirds and trogons, and parakeets. So this is something that you could print out as many copies as you want, and share them with the kids in your life, or even if you, are a bird watcher or you like to color yourself. This is a cuckoo bird that likes to eat rodents. This is another kind of hummingbird. And so I illustrated these actually as part of a bigger book. But this is the coloring book that you get as one of your bonuses for becoming a founding member. So I'll be uploading that to the site pretty soon. And so, yeah, my membership includes weekly sketching tips. It includes an end of the month Zoom meetup like we did yesterday with my first 25 students. And it includes a monthly master class where we focus on a different kind of plant or animal so that you really learn about the diversity and unity of a group. Like this month was seashells. And you may have joined me on one of my social media channels for my sketching exercise of seashells. But anyway, my monthly membership is just month to month. It's just $19 a month through Friday, and then the price goes up to $24 a month. So it's a thriving community already. There's a component where people can share their sketches and their stories about nature and their questions. And also there's lots of quick tip videos that I've filmed to help you get started with the tools and with techniques and journaling prompts and all of that stuff. Okay, so now we have a seashell. And this is from my big Cabinet of Curiosities. I can't quite remember where I got this shell, but I've traveled quite a bit in the tropics, in the Mediterranean, and in the all over the Caribbean, and in Mexico, and the Galapagos Islands, and even the what is that called? I forgot the ocean, the Celebes Sea off of Borneo. So yeah, seashells are so fun to practice sketching, and most people like to try to go on a beach vacation once a year or so, whether they take a flight somewhere in the wintertime to go to the tropics, or whether they are lucky enough to live near the ocean or just go on a weekend trip. So I love teaching people about seashells. And so when you're drawing a seashell, if you're going to be looking at it to try to identify it in a guidebook, the way they always show them in the guidebooks is like this. And here we go. This is the very best book to learn about seashells by Princeton University Press. And so I learned a lot about seashells in this book. But yeah, another bonus you get inside my program is my whole mini course on drawing seashells, where I've got a 10-page handout that illustrates all the major families of seashells you might find, because they're very widespread. So there's, a lot of families that you can find no matter where you are in the world. And so it's useful for you wherever you live. Okay, so anyway, the way we usually draw a shell, if we're trying to identify it, is with the pointy part up, that spiral, and then with the opening on the right. Now, most seashells actually have the opening on the right, but there are a few species of seashells that have it the other way around. But this is much more common. Okay, and so yeah, so we're gonna draw this. Again, you're gonna see this at a little bit different angle than I am, because you're looking at it down like this, and I'm looking at it like this. So my drawing is probably gonna look a bit different than yours. But what I like to do is I like to draw kind of like a plumb line. And I'm going to draw this a little bit bigger than life, because it's good practice to draw things different size. And you can kind of see, yeah, it's a little bit narrower than wide. And so this plumb line kind of goes from this to this. And then I will start kind of building the shell. And there's this spiral part, which in this species is pretty flat. And again, we're going to start super symbolic, just like we did with a pine cone, and then get more more detailed as we go. So this is the triangle for this spire. And then you'll notice this big solid area. And this is where the body of the snail would be inside. Because of course, a seashell is is the home, was the home of a mollusk. And you do have to be careful, be really careful if you, are ever at the beach and you want to collect a seashell, because there could be the snail sitting inside there, or it could be dead and then smelly when you're taking it home. But most often, a seashell on the beach will have a hermit crab inside of it. And those guys can hide way deep in there. And it's really hard to tell if anybody's home. And I've had multiple friends, including myself, take something home by accident, only to realize later that there was the hermit crab inside, and you feel so bad, when you end up they end up dying because take them far from the ocean. All righty, so I'm going to get rid of that plumb line actually. So that's kind of the basic body. And then we want to have the big opening, and that opening, you see how wide that is. So that's, just about as wide as the shell. And that kind of goes, there's a lip here, and then it kind of goes over here, and then over here. So if I measured from here to here, it's actually wider. Yeah, there we go. It's wider. So yeah, so now we kind of have the basic shape. Then we can start getting the shape details, and then some shadowing. Okay, so let's see, where are we? We're starting at the top. So if we look at this spiral, there are several spirals, and it can kind of actually remind you of the spirals of the pine cone, can't it? But there aren't a certain number, and they don't have spirals going both ways like a pine. They only have it going, up. So then anyway, there's going to be there's this big ridge coming off of here, and another big ridge here. And again, you're probably seeing this at a different angle. And then there's some bumpy areas here. And then that comes up to this lip, which I kind of had in the wrong place, it looks like. There we go. We can just fix that. And then we've got some more spines here. So, lots of seashells have really specific kinds of spines on them. That spine is kind of around the side, so I'm putting a line, whereas this spine is in front, so I'm not putting a line. And then, yeah. And then we've got this really obvious ridge here. And then this is where it goes in. So we've got a really strong line here. And let's see, Carolyn is saying, sketched my shells today, still need to add shadowing. Okay, great. All righty. There's some little shadowing there. Yeah, and there's a pretty strong shadow here. And then there's the rest of the ridge here. There. Okay, and then we can start the shadowing. Now, I'm not going to have time to do all of these patterns. That could take forever. But I usually try to do my three-dimensional form shadowing first. And so I'll just use the same pencil on its side, and I'll just start adding shadow. See, there's some texture to my shadow because this paper under it is textured. So look at that really strong shadow. And then we want to make it even stronger here. We want to really make that look three-dimensional, like it's a cave. And this is the deepest, darkest part of the cave. This is a really strong edge here. And again, if I was going to turn out a light, you would see just how different that looks. So yeah, usually the first thing I would do would add some shadowing just to describe the three-dimensional form. And then later on, I would be adding, all of these patterns and such. So the shadowing can be both light and dark from the sun, as well as light and dark, from the coloration. So if I did want to add some basic color here, because this is going to be brown, I could start doing that. And if I decided that my main sunlight was coming from over here, because we do see this big cast shadow here, then I would have this here would be pretty light, and this here would be a little darker. But, rendering the three-dimensional form, it takes quite a while, and we don't really have that kind of time today. But we could also add, a cast shadow. And that cast shadow, again, will really vary depending on the angle of the sun or the studio lights. And it'll also, vary in size and in darkness, depending on the kind of ground. So if this was sitting on some sand, some wet, ripply sand, that might look different than if it was sitting, on your kitchen table. Okay, well, that looks pretty fun. Yeah. So I love the part where you're adding the three-dimensional form. And sometimes it's easier to see this when you look away from it. Like if I turn from looking at my drawing to looking at my computer monitor. So right now I'm looking at my computer monitor. I kind of notice things a little bit differently. So I would start, to change that up a little bit. Like I see a little bit more shadowing here. Another thing you can do is take your drawing into a bathroom and hold it up to the mirror. And sometimes that will help you to kind of physically separate yourself from the drawing or emotionally, I guess, too. And then to kind of understand its form a little bit better. So anyway, I don't know how many people are in the chat box, but if you have any questions about my membership, again, it's christineelder.com/membership. And I'm promoting that all this week. It's my big launch with my lowest price ever. So if you become a founding member, you get to keep the $19 a month price forever. And it's just a monthly membership. So if you need to, if you get busy and you need to quit or something, you can. Although if you quit, you lose that founding members price. But the founding members also get to help, vote on the type of content what we'll be doing and when. So it's really a team effort. And the reason I created this membership was because students had been, asking me to do something a little bit more with a community base. So I found a new program, a new hosting website. This is going to be really hard to do here. A new hosting website where I can I can have that community component, and people can really communicate with each other and like each other's posts and give supportive advice on people's sketches. But it's not so much about the sketches as it is what you're learning about. And so like yesterday when we were chatting on our first group call, we had some people sharing their sketches of birds and seashells, and we were really mainly more talking about what they learned in the field about those animals and plants while they were drawing them than really having an art critique. And I know a lot of times it can be really intimidating if you go on to some of these like Facebook pages and you see all this beautiful art and it looks like somebody spent hours on their journal page and made it look like something you would just, like frame. And that can be really intimidating and kind of take the whole idea away. And I like to really focus on the process and what you're learning. You're welcome, Carolyn. So, for example, it doesn't have to take a long time, and it doesn't. Yeah, like these sweet peas I did the other day. I forced myself to just spend 10 minutes sketching, and I got this whole page, and I studied the structure of the pea, and I learned about the unique anatomy of a pea flower with these banners and the wings and the keel. And I even watched a little bumblebee. And you don't need a lot of detail, to get that, to cement that memory in your mind. And it's so wonderful once you have a page like this and a whole book of sketches, it can remind you of that time or that season a lot more than just taking a photo on your phone and having it, get lost on the interwebs, right? Great. Okay. Well, so anyway, we sketched a few things. We started with these simple Flanders poppies, and then we sketched this cone, and I sketched a few other things earlier today on my Instagram. If you want to go over to that elder girl. I don't know if my video is backwards, if my words are backwards when you're looking at this, but my Instagram is that elder girl. And we sketched some other things. But again, I'm going to be doing things all week and promoting this new program, online program. And there's certain benefits and bonuses you only get if you're a founding member, including the lowest price of $19 a month and my Tropical Birds coloring book that you get to print out. And only the cover is color. So the rest of it's really easy to print and it doesn't take a lot of ink. And you can do this in the summer with your kids or grandkids or with your students and learning about birds. Okay, well, I'm going to get going. And I hope you enjoyed this. Make sure to keep following me on YouTube. Share my channel with friends if you know other people that love nature and love studying its beauty through a nature journaling process. If you have any questions, again, about my membership, this is the link, christineelder.com/membership. And like I said, it's only $19 a month. And so that's less than going to see a 3-hour movie. It's less than buying a book or taking an in-person class. It's less than getting a Starbucks coffee once a week. So this founding member price, it goes up to $24 a month on Friday. So this sale is just this week. So I'm really encouraging a lot of people to join so that we'll have a really active community. Like I said, we already have 25 members, but the more members, the better. That means there's going to be more interaction on the community page, more sharing on our monthly Zoom calls. And next month, we'll have our first masterclass, which is on insects, which I love sketching insects. And those are, of course, most widespread and prevalent during the summer months. So that's why we're doing insects in July. Then we're doing reptiles in August because they're also out with the heat. And then my master class in September will be about birds because we see the migrating birds moving through, and you can sketch those. And then October's master class is on fungi because that's when we start getting the autumn rains. And there's an amazing diversity of fungi to sketch. Those are really fun. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you had fun sketching a few little things. Yeah, if you have any questions, just go to my website. There is a contact page on my website, or you can just reply or comment in this thread right here on YouTube if you have any questions about my program. The program also includes a one-on-one coaching call with me, kind of like an introductory call with me that I usually charge $75 for, but that's free and included for founding members so that we can get to know each other. I can get to know what you want to learn about, what your strengths and weaknesses are in terms of sketching and journaling and just access to the natural world. And that's a unique thing that I'm only giving away to the founding members. Okay, so yeah, again, the membership is a monthly membership with an active community, a library of content, weekly sketching challenges, monthly master classes, and end of the month community meetups. Okay, well, I got to get going. I hope you have a wonderful day, and yeah, you can get outside and do some sketching. Okay, bye-bye.